I'm Jason Hewett. I'm the GM of Veridian Solutions. This is my first sleep out, CEO sleep out, so I didn't really know what to expect, and I was quite grateful to get here and find out we were going to get sheltered from all this rain. There was some indications in the emails that you may or may not get some coverage. I couldn't understand why so many people were out in the elements rather than in the 3 rooms of choice, and once I realised how much snoring and general noise that goes on in the main rooms, I understand now why some people have hidden in little crevices and other parts of the park. Didn't sleep that well, but that wasn't a surprise. I don't sleep well, generally speaking. I'm a light sleeper. So probably got about an hour, then spent about 2.5 hours trying to drown out the snoring of my immediate neighbour. Eventually about 3 o'clock gave up on that and decided to come out and wander around a bit. Although you can't wander very far with all this rain, so you're sort of confined to a narrow corridor. It's been a good eye-opener, I think. On the way to work every day I pass probably at least 2 or 3 homeless people, probably at least 2 or 3 beggars. I'm always torn between that. Do you give them any money? Do you not? Some people seem to look more destitute than others, so you sort of think to yourself, are these people genuinely in need? I'm sure most of them are. So when I got invited to attend this sleep out, I thought that's an excellent way of making sure that your contribution actually went to a good cause. And it was quite good talking to some of the caseworkers here, and it was good hearing from some of the homeless people that have been helped by St. Vinny's, to realise that it's not just another charity that squanders a lot of money and you don't really feel any benefit from it. And it's quite eye-opening to experience that, although it's a bit of a comfort here compared to, I guess, what some people have to put up with. It's amazing how cold it gets at night, lying on the floor, even just standing around, not moving. You just seem to get the heat sapped out of you. Us CEOs are quite fortunate that we're all here with nice sleeping bags that are nice and thermal, and we've only got to do it for 1 night. But it must be pretty bleak night after night after night, trying to find somewhere that's dry, somewhere that's warm, and then I guess keep what possessions you've got safe. So no, it's been good for me. I think I was probably a bit ill prepared. I'll definitely have a pillow next time. I thought I'd make do this time round. That didn't work out well at all. And it was definitely worth buying the extra bit of cardboard. I may go for 3 pieces of cardboard next year, because that floor is quite hard. But I think overall it's good talking to a couple of the CEOs, but mainly talking to, I think, the caseworkers, the things that they have to experience and the things that they've done was quite good. My 3rd eldest child was most concerned about me dying tonight because of the germs on the floor. So he woke up a few times during the night, concerned to my wife that I may die from these germs that were perceived to be on the floor for my 5-year-old child. I've reassured him through numerous texts that I will be safe. But it probably is a bit more of a reality for people that do have to sleep, I guess, wherever they can. They're not always in nice, clean or cleanish environments that we're finding ourselves in tonight. But overall, very eye-opening experience. Definitely come back next year. I'll try and set my target for fundraising a bit higher than I did this year. But no, it's been good. I've enjoyed taking part of it, even though I am lacking sleep. I find it quite difficult to ask people that weren't immediately close to me. Talking to a few people that have done quite well in their fundraising, they seem to have less concern about how far that net gets cast. I was surprised near the end that probably about 4 or 5 people popped up and contributed. I didn't ask, but they'd heard from people I had asked that I was doing it. So it did sort of show you that you do need to cast that net a bit further than you just think, oh, I'm only going to ask people I really know well. Lesson learned for next time is really just push that envelope out a bit further, and I probably would have raised a lot more money. I'm not sure if it's just that, I mean, there's a mix of people I see. You see some people during the day that are, have obviously got mental problems. And it was interesting talking to one of the female caseworkers in the part of the city where I am, which is Union Station, you don't really see many females around at all. There's a couple of old ladies that talk to themselves and wander around, but predominantly it's males around there. There's I think a soup kitchen on the corner of Erskine and Clarence, so you see a lot of them sort of hanging around close to that when it opens in the morning. Certainly noticed more and more buskers, so they're sort of now becoming where you've got 3 or 4 almost on the same corner, so the prevalence of them certainly increased. I noticed some buildings like Bank of China has now put up metal bars to stop them sleeping in the windows. So I think as the numbers have grown around where we work, certain businesses have taken action to try and discourage the homeless from being near there. But I've got no idea where the female homeless people shelter. I think I was talking to one of the caseworkers. She said there's plenty of them in the city. They're obviously not down that particular part. And that's a bit of a revelation, because not seeing them, you sort of don't realise that there are a number of homeless females in the city. Yeah, I think the general person in Australia would probably see most homeless people as basically almost of their own affliction. Don't think most people would perceive that hardship can come across anybody, and anybody can end up in that situation. So I think sort of people do classify homeless people as almost people that have chosen not to work, have chosen not to live within society. And I think the revelation here is, especially with what Vinnie's is doing to try and prevent people going homeless in the first place, is that quite a lot of people hit hardship, and I guess you just don't ever see that's going to happen to you or somebody you know. And I think listening tonight and listening to actually how many people there are homeless and how many families and young children are homeless, I think that's quite an eye-opening aspect. Because just say you see a couple of male homeless people around, so you think there's probably maybe 100, maybe a couple of hundred in the city. To suddenly hear that there's significantly more, and there's women and children amongst all of that, I think that's quite surprising. I certainly wasn't aware of the numbers, and so it was part of being part of this fundraiser. You're getting that insight that it's a bigger problem. It's an increasing problem, and it was interesting hearing some of the talks tonight about how it's getting worse as obviously the cost of Sydney gets higher and higher and higher. But as people were talking about with community, you don't want to leave the area where you've lived just to try and get to affordable housing, because the natural reaction is if someone can't afford to live in the suburb that they're in, then move to a cheaper suburb. But you don't really perceive that might be 5, 6, 7, 8 suburbs away. They've then got no friends, no family, no community in that particular area that they moved to. So yeah, that's quite surprising. I think people probably need to be more aware of homeless people's. It's not just a choice that people have chosen to do this thing. Probably the vast majority of them have been forced upon them, and there are unfortunately mental patients that have been released out into the community, similar to other countries in the world, where they're deemed to be no harm to anybody else, so they're released out there and they can't fend for themselves. So no, it's quite a surprise. The 105,000 it's a big number. You can't perceive that many people being out and about on the streets every night. That's probably it from my perspective. I'll certainly try and encourage some fellow CEOs to join in maybe next year. It's quite surprising how many repeat people there are, and people older than myself, basically trying to sleep out on a few pieces of cardboard. So you think, more people should be aware. It's as it was for myself. It does open your eyes a bit to come along, versus just seeing a couple of people on the streets and thinking, these people are hustling you for money. So you try and skirt around them as everybody else does, realizing that it is actually a problem and a growing problem, but that there is something you can do about it, rather than just throwing a buck in the McDonald's cup that they've got, which is always my concern. Is you just don't know what they're going to do with that money. Putting it to something like St. Vinnie's or any of the homeless charities that there are means that that couple of bucks that you're putting in is going to go to good use. So I'd probably say try and drag at least one of my other directors along next year.